everyone, welcome to the live Q&A with the makers of Jaguar Spirit. I'm Aliya Jasmine. I'm an environmental journalist and I will be your host today. I'm very excited to welcome the makers of this incredible film and learn a little bit more about what went into making this film. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests. First, we have Emmy Kondo. Emmy, welcome. Thank you so much for talking with me today, especially after that screening.
Yeah, after that screening, thank you so much for hosting today.
So, Emmy, I know you're a wildlife filmmaker and a Nat Geo explorer. For some of the viewers today who just saw that film for the first time and may not know much about you, about the filmmaker, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Costa Rican Japanese, and as you will see on the film, I'm very close to Bolivia. I'm a wildlife filmmaker. I just recently graduated from a master's in wildlife filmmaking from the University of West Finland. And this program is in partnership with the BBC Natural History Unit, which I basically grew up just loving those kind of like films, Blue Planet, everything. I think that every wildlife filmmaker will say that. But it was just like a great program just to be close to people that have done that for years and just gaining a bit of experience. During that process, I did a version of this film, and I was able to have some mentors from that program as well for this film. And then I've been working for World Animal Protection as a multimedia producer and now a global multimedia manager for the past 11 years. But then with them, I've just been filming animals and disasters, animals in the wild, in farms, animals like wildlife exploited for the entertainment industry. A few years ago, we created another film about dolphinariums in Mexico, but also like been able to luckily film beautiful wildlife in Latin America. So yeah, I've been around just like basically filming animals and really can't wait for everyone, if you haven't watched the film, for you to watch the film. And if you have, thank you so much. I think that it's just great that we're having this film out, which I've been working on since 2018. So it's just amazing to have it being released today, finally.
It's incredible. It's always incredible to see these beautiful films from especially female filmmakers like yourself in the wildlife space. But I think anyone who watched this really felt that connection of how you introduced this film and why it was personal to you happening in Bolivia. I mean, it really was a really unique perspective that brought us in. So, and I know, within the film, we saw Roberto introduced. So Roberto, Vieto, welcome as well. Roberto, we saw you in the film, obviously working with World Animal Protection as a veterinarian, as this expert in wildlife welfare. For people who don't know your background beyond this film and what we just saw of you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what brought you to this moment and what we just saw on screen in Bolivia?
Sure. Well, first, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining this premiere. For us, it's super important to have you here and for joining this Q&A. And thank you, AJ, for hosting this. Well, my name is Roberto Vieto. I'm a veterinarian from Costa Rica. I've been working in the wildlife welfare field for around 15 years now, especially focused in the Latin American region, but now I'm involved in different projects around the world. My position in World Animal Protection is Global Animal Welfare Advisor, so I give this technical support from different, from the animal welfare perspective to different teams. And I think that one of the most important elements that bring my link to this project is that I've been doing extensive work in terms of illegal wildlife trade, commercial exploitation of wildlife in the Amazon region related to pets trade, tourism, bushmeat, and traditional medicine. And when Emmy talked to me about this project, I was like, yes. We need to do this together, and for me, it's an honor to be part of this project with Emmy. So yes, that's me.
I guess a question for both of you would really be about the situation in Bolivia. You know, we saw what happened in this documentary and kind of what the attention you were trying to bring on some of the issues with the government and some of the issues with some of the indigenous communities in the area. But can you kind of set the scene, set the context? What was happening in Bolivia that kind of led to the making of this film?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I think that we need to remember that jaguars have always been like a threatened species in Bolivia, especially a while ago. They were threatened for their skins mainly, and I think that that's one of the main reasons why it got included in the IUCN list of threatened species. Um, and that actually helped a lot in Bolivia. And then the skins were no longer being trafficked to the US, which was the main market at that time. But then since 2014, and who knows since when, that we don't know, but like since 2014, the Bolivian authorities started to confiscate and seized basically jaguar body parts being or trying to be trafficked to Asia. They started hearing ads in the radio, just people saying, we're going to be buying Jaguar body parts, just call to this phone number. And then one of the biggest cases that Bolivia has is just this the seizure of around 600 fangs, Jaguar fangs, that were being found in a house and in Santa Cruz in Bolivia. Then there were other packages that were being sent by post, Jaguar fangs being posted directly to Bolivia, from Bolivia to China, and I think that like this started to be seen as a phenomenon that needed to be studied. So I think that since 2014, there are some scientists and people that started to study the traffic in Bolivia and to understand what was happening. And what they found is that jaguars were being trafficked to many Asian countries as a replacement, we suppose, for tiger fangs and tiger bones that are being used in traditional Asian medicine. And then basically jaguars are being being used as a replacement. And like that's, I think, that the moment when I realized that we need to tell this story. Something needs to be done about this. And I remember like around 2018, I was just in the office editing a video with evidence from a similar traffic that is happening in Suriname as well, with jaguars that are being traded to Asia for traditional medicine. And I was very shocked with the evidence. And I just remember being in the office with Roberto, and then I remember casually he just like turned his chair and said, the same thing is happening in Bolivia. I've received also information from other sources and my trips to the Amazon that this is happening. And I think that since then we both just started like thinking we need to tell this story, because there was very little information in Spanish. Most of the information that was around was in English. And so I especially felt that we needed to tell this story in the language. So even though you're seeing as well a version in English, there's also a version in Spanish that we're also trying to get out to make people aware of this topic. But yeah, I don't know, Roberto, you want to tell us a bit more that I left out of the Bolivian situation?
No, I think that you cover almost everything, but I think it's important for the people that haven't seen the documentary or that are planning to see it, to understand that maybe the first records were in 2014, but this activity is still happening. It not only happens in Bolivia, but it also happens in other countries in Latin America. And we're talking about international illegal wildlife trade, and this needs to be tackled right now.
And Roberto, this might be a very obvious question for you, especially working in this world, but for people who are watching this for the first time, I mean, we see the fangs. Those fangs are not acquired through like a dentist or because they naturally fall out. I mean, when you see these fangs, it means that the entire jaguar was likely killed and used illegally. Is that correct?
Yes, well, when we talk about illegal wildlife trade, I think that one thing that is implicit in that is the extreme suffering that the animals have during this process. We're talking that every single part of that change includes suffering for the animal, from the capture, the transport, how the animals are sold, or how they are kept, or the final destination. Particularly in the case of jaguars, to get those parts of the jaguars, animals have to be killed, of course. So there are specialized, sometimes there are specialized hunters that know how to go and kill those jaguars. They can bait the animals, the jaguars, to get them closer. They can use even live prey to get these jaguars close to the areas where they will kill. And sometimes they receive not only one but several shots to guarantee that the animal will be killed. And when we're talking about jaguars, we cannot forget about the idea that these animals are sentient beings capable of feeling pain, fear, distress, and this implies a great suffering for them. And even in some cases, when they kill the adults because they want, the big fangs, sometimes they left the cubs, and the cubs can be entering the illegal wildlife trade for pet purposes. So it's a terrible situation and a very complex situation from an animal welfare perspective, from every point that you see it.
I think that's so important to talk about and to think about too. And I mean, this film does it so well. But one of the things that I often think about when I see these kind of products in these markets is, a lot of the times, and you guys know this better than anyone, but the people who are buying the fangs or the products, sometimes they're animal lovers. They love the animals so much that they like to be close to it, and they don't realize the suffering that happened behind the scenes. And I think that's one of those incredible things that your film really reveals in this. And I think one of the other things that was really striking about this film as well was really the part about the prisons that you got into, and the idea that these materials and these products are getting in and out of the prisons, like whether it's overtly or covertly. And I would love to hear more about how these materials and these products are getting in and out of the prison. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think I can get that one, Amy. Well, just to give you a little bit of context, well, of course, Amy started with this project in 2018, gathering more information about what was the full context of the jaguar illegal wildlife trade. And when we started gathering information, we got in contact with different people in Bolivia to try to put the different pieces of the puzzle to understand what was the reality there. And when we were getting all this information and trying to understand the scale of the jaguar illegal trade, it was shared with us in September 2022, last year, a video footage from inside Mocovi prison in the Beni department in Bolivia, of an inmate that was explaining how they receive jaguar skins in the jail to make different products with jaguar skin. The inmate mentioned that these skins, they can request to hunters to bring those skins to the jail so they can buy it, or in interviews with people from local markets, especially Campesino market in Trinidad municipality in Beni, they mentioned also that they can buy the skins and send them to the jail for the inmates to prepare the different products. And we're talking about hats, belts, wallets, different type of products made of jaguar skin, and not only jaguar skin, also other animals like peccaries, boas, anacondas, rheas. It's very shocking to see this recording, because when you think of a jail, you think that this is a place where the highest security will be applied.
Yeah.
And we're talking about people that did a previous offense. They are in the prison for a reason, and they are getting engaged in a illegal activity in Bolivia, because in Bolivia it's completely illegal to capture or trade any product made with jaguar parts. So, of course, this is a very sensitive topic. There are some unknowns, but from the recording, yes, we can say that yes, the inmates can request those products to local hunters, and that there is a direct link with the local market in Campesino market in Trinidad.
So, Roberto, is it fair to say that beyond the prisoners requesting this, in your research and in your expertise, is the act of using these wildlife products, is that encouraged by the local government and by prison administration?
Well, that's a complex question, but all our evidence, and this is the most complex part of this research and this project, is that when we receive that video, we start looking for more information, and there are videos in social networks where these products are sold in a fair, in an artisanal fair in Mokovi prison, where you can go and buy products made with different wildlife skins. And in some of those videos, you can see prison authorities inviting the population of Trinidad, the population of the Beni department, to come and buy the products. They don't mention specifically Jaguar, but when you see the recordings, or when you see the posts, you can see hats made of Jaguar skin and different products, claws, that everything indicates that we're talking about Jaguar parts. It's very clear from the type of products that we're seeing in those videos. And the most recent one was this year in February for Valentine's Day. They were doing this fair in front of Mokovi prison, and they were inviting the community to go there. Again, they are not talking about Jaguars, but you can see in the video parts of the skin and parts of like the claws, that everything indicates that we're talking about Jaguars. And a part of what you have seen in the video, like in Campesino Market, where all the products are exposed, displayed openly to people to buy, which is shocking when you see that the level of the illegal activity is displayed so publicly. It's really an issue that has to be addressed right now.
Yeah, I think that, just to add to Roberto, I think that the problem with the Maccabi prison project and just like seeing openly displayed, you as a person that you don't know the law in your country, in Bolivia, or if you're a foreigner that loves animals and wants to have a piece that symbolizes the love that you have for them. And you don't know that this is an illegal activity in the country. If you see it being displayed so openly and being made in a governmental institution, which is this prison, because it is supported by the government, if you see it displayed like that, then you will immediately think that this is a legal activity and that those animals can be used and you can buy them. I think that the problem with this is not only, the illegality of the activities that are happening there, it's also what it is promoting, and like the impression that is given on other people that this is an illegal activity, and this is something that it might encourage other people to join and do it. So yeah, I think that we also need to think beyond, what we see and the illegalities of what is happening in the prison, and what kind of impression we're making on the people that are coming to Bolivia, or even the locals, which we also saw in the market, that is like a growing interest of local people to buy these products that are made of wildlife.
Totally. It almost creates this false normalcy about it all. So what needs to happen then to better protect jaguars and other species that are impacted and that you see being sold in these markets? What needs to happen? It's a question for both of you.
Yeah, Roberto, I don't know if you want to start.
Yes, I can start. Well, first of all, we need to improve what the enforcement of the legislation. You need political will, because you can have beautiful laws, but if you don't have the resources to implement in a rigorous manner that legislation, this type of activities will continue. And it is also needed an alignment with not only the source country of the product, but also with countries that can play a role in the transport and the final destination of those products. So in terms of enforcement, that is a critical need. There is also a need of more awareness. People need to understand what is going on with the jaguars, all the suffering that they are encountering with this as a result of this activity, that you are threatening the population. Like Amy mentioned, jaguars are vulnerable in Bolivia. They are nearly threatened in other parts of the world, in other range states. And this is putting more pressure to the survival of this species. And we need to do a positive engagement with people that are consumers of traditional medicine. Traditional medicine doesn't need to rely at all in wild animal products. there are enough plant-based alternatives and mineral alternatives that can be used by them, and they also need to know the threats that they're exposed when they're buying remedies or medicines made with wild animals that can imply a human health risk, or that can threaten or cause more suffering to animals.
Yeah, I also think that, a part of this is as well to try to take out the myth that traditional medicine and the use of wildlife in traditional medicine is only happening in Asian communities or in Asian countries, because we clearly see that is happening everywhere in the world. Like every part of the world has something that is using an animal to cure some type of diseases, and this is not being proved scientifically. And so I think that we need to take out the myth that that is just happening in those communities. And then I think that one of the other things that we also need to do is just to start that conversation with the local communities who have started to source these animals from the wild, because they're like basically getting a false narrative of what is happening in the country, and they are just being told that there are too many jaguars, and jaguars are like very like animals that could harm their communities in some sort of way. And so I think that there needs to happen like a conversation with them. I think that we can see on the film that that is something that definitely changed in that community. We were there just for a day. We were just, going with these biologists who have like this amazing project and taking their time just to go to these communities. But I think that, just having that open conversation with them and making sure that we all understand what is the important role that jaguars play in the wild, and that we understand that they are umbrella species that, that if they disappear, other species will disappear too. And what would that mean for them as well? Because just I feel that bringing the topic closer to us is something that will make us do something. So I think that the more we can spread the word, and the more that we can share like what is happening in Bolivia, and the more we can educate or have these difficult conversations with people who are maybe thinking otherwise, then I think that maybe we can just like make a change to stop this illegal trade in Bolivia.
And I want to talk about the community aspect, but before I do, some incredible comments coming in. So thank you to everybody who's joining us on this Q&A right now. Definitely put your questions in there, and we will get to audience questions very soon. I know that there's probably a ton of things you guys want to talk about, and I shouldn't be talking my head off. So we will ask some of your questions very soon. I did want to read one comment that came in here from Katie. Katie says, "What a beautifully made, devastating, and powerful documentary. Thank you to Emmy, Roberto, and all involved for bringing this story to the world." So thank you guys so much. Again, we really appreciate you being here with us and kind of giving us the background as well. I think you brought up something really important, Emmy, and as an environmental journalist, I've covered stories about human wildlife conflict and how it impacts communities all over the world, and whether it's elephants in East Africa to, mountain lions here in Los Angeles, where I live. One of the big things that continues to come up when we saw it in your film is really this idea of wildlife coming into communities, impacting farmers, impacting livelihoods. So Roberto, I'd love to hear from you as well. Are alternative livelihoods possible for these communities? How do we achieve that coexistence?
Definitely, and this is a really important point, because when we talk about solution, how to address this issue, we need to consider communities at the center of the discussions. They need to have an active participation. I think that there is plenty room to apply a lot of different methods that are being developed by research to mitigate those impacts of jaguar attacks to different activities. But I think that I will take the question a little bit more to the root cause. We need to start thinking about how the land conversion and the habitat loss is creating this critical scenario where wildlife is getting closer of people, getting closer of communities. Because if we reduce their habitat, if we reduce their prey, these animals are getting to get closer to human settlements, and this is where the negative interactions starts. So I think that having the communities as an active part of the conversation for the solutions, bringing all the biological data, all the research that have been done for jaguars, and understanding the root cause, so like to rethink how the system or human activities or development is causing damage to the habitat. This is like the critical route to start proposing solutions. We need to understand that if we don't protect the natural habitat of jaguars, these cases will continue. And I don't know, Amy, if you want to add something else on that.
No, I think that you have covered everything.
That was great. That's really informative. And we're getting a lot of audience questions. So if you're okay, I'm just going to start reading some of those for you guys as well. I know a lot of people just watched the premiere and they're really curious coming out of that. So here's a question from Georgie. Georgie says, this is a global issue. It's tragic that such magnificent sentient animals are reduced to these products. What can people do to help wherever they are in the world? And I think that's a really great question because, you know, no matter who watches this from anywhere, they'll say, what can I do? You know, like, what can I do right now? If I can't go to Bolivia, what can I do from where I live? So is there an answer to that?
I think that this is a very difficult topic, and of course, all of us would want to do something. But I think that we also need to understand that it's something that is very interesting about Latin America, and the more that we hear from outside, the more we do inside. And so I think that coming from a different country, I think that the more that we can spread the world, the more that we can make a noise about this topic. I know that it might sound silly, but maybe we can really create a buzz in social media or in media, then the local government might do something. Because so far we have reached out to the local government, giving them the evidence, and also, you know, putting basically ourselves into their hands if they need any information from what we gathered, and we haven't received any answer yet. So I do feel that the more we received that buzz from other countries and wherever you are in the world, the more that will create pressure internally in Bolivia, and the more the government will have to look to what is happening in the country, and then perhaps just start reinforcing their law.
I think it's interesting because, Georgie, I know we had talked prior to today, and one of the things you said to me is how important it is, and Roberto actually said this as well, but how important it is for the Spanish version of this to really start circulating. And so for all of those who are watching, if you know anyone who is Spanish speaking or lives in a Spanish speaking part of the world, send this documentary to them and have it circulate, because like, I think one of the things that Emmy said at the beginning of this interview, which is so interesting, is that this story has been told in English, but it's really important that it's being told in Spanish. So I think that could be a really great call to action as well.
And I think also, just to add on some recommendations for how to help, we know that part of these products can be placed in places that have some touristic interest. So you can share this and talk to your friends. Like, whenever you visit Latin America, never engage in activities that harm wildlife. Never buy products made of wild animals, especially jaguars, and have a responsible behavior in social networks, because part of this is showed in posts in social networks, and they can report that in a safe way when it's in social networks, or always, well, taking in consideration safety, but this needs to be reported as soon as possible whenever you encounter an illegal case of wildlife trade.
That's a great note. And also for anyone watching, before you travel, World Animal Protection's website actually has incredible resources of wildlife being used for entertainment, wildlife being used in tourism. I highly recommend that you go on those and check them out, because there's some incredible resources that can make you a much more aware traveler of what to look out for and what to call out as well. Another question just came in as well from Esteban, who's saying, should governments actively demystify the use of animals in traditional medicine or ban it?
I think that that's quite interesting, because especially in Bolivia, that is not a legal activity. So that's already prohibited by law. And I think that, as Roberto was saying before, the problem, I think, it is enforcement of that law, and also education of the communities who are creating those products, thinking that those are legal as well. So I think that there is more of an enforcement problem that needs to happen, and an education problem as well.
No, sorry, just to complement on that. And I think that there is enough research now, and even World Animal Protection launched a platform together with Wild Crew and Oxford University to have these TCM alternatives to wild animal preparations. So I think that making those links with governments can only take us to the right way, and offering those alternatives to any kind of wild animal use.
Roberto, you work a lot with the legal and illegal wildlife trade around the world. Can you kind of put it into perspective for us and contextualize why, like the jaguar trade is particularly of interest or important on the macro level?
Sure. Well, we need to understand that Latin America, or at least one of the main threats for wildlife in Latin America is the illegal trade, and it's done by for different reasons, like we mentioned, for exotic pets or for traditional medicine or bushmeat. I think that jaguars is bringing us like an alarm, because jaguars suffered a lot of trade in the past, and this new boom uh, of jaguar legal trade, it's a big alarm because the habitat is very different from the past. Jaguars lost like 50% of the range in the Americas. They got extinct in places like El Salvador or Uruguay, and in the last 2 decades, they lost like 25% of the population. So this is the type, like when you consider all the threats of jaguars, of habitat fragmentation, loss of habitat, prey depletion or reduction, adding this new element of legal wildlife trade will put the population of jaguars into the verge of extinction. It's like there is no way that they can tolerate this new commercial activity.
So it's kind of a now or never situation. It's a race against time.
Exactly. And I think that not only jaguars, but the commercial exploitation of any kind of wild animal, it represents a lot of suffering. We're talking about animals that are not domesticated, they are not used to live in human context. And this is putting a lot of pressure into the conservation of these species.
And also, I mean, is there an aspect in terms of like the biodiversity crisis where you're talking about a major predator species and what that will do, the ramifications of what that will do trickling down through that entire ecosystem?
Yes, because jaguars, well, first of all, jaguars are indicators of healthy environments, and they play a super important role in terms of controlling the population of other different species. So taking out jaguars from the ecosystems will definitely imply into modifications of that ecosystems, and that unbalance is, of course, of harm for the whole ecosystem. And I think also from a Latin American perspective, jaguars are part of our natural heritage, and they are part of our culture, stories, indigenous stories, legends, and we cannot think of jaguars just as a commodity. They are part of our natural heritage, and I cannot see a world without that majestic species from my region. That will be the worst scenario for us.
Yeah, I think that that is also one of the main elements that brought us to this story. It's just, imagine that we all grew up, all Latin Americans, we all grew up just hearing stories about magical jaguars from the Aztecs, that they had like jaguar warriors, and to the south, like all of our indigenous communities, they all had stories with this magnificent animal. And then sadly, we just started seeing them as commodities. And then, yeah, we just started losing them. So in some way, we have lost that, ancestral connection that we had with this magnificent animals. And I think that that's also one of the things that we don't need, to happen. We can't lose this, very symbolic animals for our culture, and then just like to be used and transformed into products, what would happen with that? So I think that that's also a call to action for us, and to not lose that part of our culture as well.
I love that you started this film with that. I mean, I just felt like it was such a beautiful way to put into context the history of what this animal means beyond, just from a very human perspective, what it means for the culture, what it meant for you specifically. I thought that was a really, really beautiful way to put this all into perspective. I do have a question for you. I mean, we saw Roberto come in to this film, and I have a question just for you guys, if you don't mind sharing, but did you guys know each other before this film, or was that like your first time meeting within the context of this film?
No, we worked together. And so, yeah, basically like before this film, we worked together and we just like been bouncing, back and forth, anything that we find about jaguars. And so like, yeah, we have a friendship. And yeah, just like working on this because we both feel quite passionate about the topic. But yeah, it's been a good ride just to work on something with your friends, basically.
It seems like it. I mean, the energy just seems so natural between you, and so it was really beautiful to watch such an important, especially with the context of such an important cause. The film, I mean, itself runs around 28 minutes or so. Was there anything that didn't make the film that ended up on the cutting room floor that you wish you could have fit in to that?
There's a lot in there that I wish we could. Yeah, and sadly we lost a couple of characters in there as well. A lot of amazing people that are fighting for for the cause and have been there working for the Jaguars since 2014, since the first cases came up. And so it was really sad just to see those stories just falling. But I think that at the end, we just ended up with like, I just really wanted to give that part of the communities a bit more of a space because it really needed it. So yeah, it's just really sad that we missed some of those. But yeah, quite happy.
Roberto, what about you? Was there anything that ended up on that editing room floor that you wish had made it in there?
There were a lot of reactions in the field that we didn't capture in camera probably. And whatever happens, like normally happens during the filming of a documentary, funny moments, difficult moments. But something that I want to remark from what Amy was saying is like this is an incredible project led by Amy, but it involved the support of different people, research team, incredible contacts in Bolivia. So I think that it's the moment that, of course, Amy and I, we have like a really nice friendship, and we work together in a really special way. We share the same passion for wildlife, but this is a big effort from a lot of people. That is the right time to say thank you to all, because yes, the result is amazing, and we're expecting to really create a big noise about what is happening with jaguars.
Yeah, I think that, it's so interesting when you do things with, people that are close to you and are your friends, but then, seeing this turn it into something that can really make some good out of it. And that also speaks about the power of you, like we sometimes say like, oh yeah, I'm just a person here, what can I do about like this big problem? And then just like talking casually with Roberto about this, and just like then both of us engaging into always looking for information, and then saying, okay, yes, we're going to be doing this film because we need to, kind of like speaks about the power that each of us have. And the small things that we are thinking that are just small, maybe they can turn into something big. And I think that that's very interesting, and something that I would encourage other people to do, because sometimes we just say, oh no, who am I just to talk about this, or who am I just to do something about this very big complicated issue that is happening. It speaks about like what we can do, and that's the power of you believing in your projects and your passion and like what you can do. And I think that for both of us, if I can speak for Roberto, I think that is about like trying to do something for these species that is very close to us as well.
And I mean, Roberto, I mean, I think it's very easy when we're telling these important environmental stories, especially for species that don't speak English, that you can get into, that aren't human, that you can get into these really deep places that are stuck in red tape and bureaucracy, and can get quite bogged down by the realities of, how governments are or aren't protecting us. I guess my question is maybe a little bit more hopeful than it deserves, and perhaps a little too optimistic, but I'll ask it anyways. A blue sky scenario. If this, when this film gets a lot of buzz and it gets circulated everywhere, what would be that blue sky scenario for you? What would be the ultimate outcome that you are both looking for?
Well, I think that prioritization of wildlife in different contexts, a very simple measure that can be made by the Bolivian government is replacing any kind of wildlife skin or product entering into the jail, and continue with that training and capacity skill that they have with inmates, but don't using at all any wildlife product. I think that is the first step that needs to happen. But of course, we're pushing a bigger conversation. We're pushing for better law enforcement. We're pushing for including wildlife as part of the development agenda and protecting their habitats. We really need to put in the conversation what are the real damages of the commercial exploitation of wildlife, legal or illegal. And I think that this documentary is helping to elevate the debate around that.
We have a few more comments and questions coming in, so let me just read a couple of these for you. Alice says, such a powerful story. Katie said, I loved your rallying message at the end, Emmy. And we have a question here from Ben. Ben says, while filming, was there a moment when you felt at risk? It's a great question.
Yeah. Well, before we went to Bolivia, I think that there were a lot of safety measures that we took, because it's one thing just to say, yes, we're doing this film, but then another just to put yourself at risk. And I think that it is important just to say as well that, yes, we're telling the story. We want the jaguars to be alive, but we also want to be able to tell more stories as well. And so the safety of ourselves was of course a priority. So we tried to minimize all those risks as much as we could. There were just a couple of moments, if I may say, Roberto, especially filming with Roberto. We were visiting some of these markets in the region, and we were filming Roberto's interview in one of these places, and then all of a sudden we just heard a car just parking outside of the building where we were in, and because it was in the night, there was no noise. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people heard Roberto's interview and us just like going and going back again on questions. And then we just heard that car just like parking outside of our building, and then just, it didn't leave for like a full hour. I think that was the only moment where we both, felt okay, yeah, this is, this is a situation that might put us in danger. So yeah, we just like took the measures that we had already put in place for that and stopped the filming. But yeah, just, I think that the main problem is that it wasn't risky, the rest of it, which I think that is more shocking than when it is, because then everyone thinks that this is a legal activity, that what they are doing is okay, and it doesn't even matter if you're filming them or not. So I think that is the more shocking thing than if it was a risky situation, because then what that means, what is it creating in the communities?
I'd just like to point out that you did a documentary about wild jaguars, and the thing that made you felt most at risk was humans. Like, can we all just take a moment to think about the implications of that? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we are basically the biggest threat this planet has, and that is exactly, that's a great example of it.
I know we have a lot more questions and I would love to keep talking to you, but in the interest of time, I would like to ask you one final question, which is just, is there anything that I haven't asked you yet? Is there anything that our viewers haven't asked you yet that you think it's really important that people know before we end this Q&A? And it's a question for both of you.
Roberto, I don't know if you want to start.
No, I was thinking that for me, one really important thing is to ask people to help us to spread the message. I think this is like the most crucial objective of this project, to spread the message and to please reflect on the damages that the commercial exploitation of wildlife is causing from an animal welfare perspective, from a habitat protection perspective, and from a human health perspective too, the risk that implies. So I think that the reflection on that, and to please join the initiatives that are trying to stop this commercial exploitation of wildlife.
Yeah, I think that for me it would be as well just asking people to spread the message, spread the film, especially the Spanish version one, which I think is quite crucial for us and for our communities to be aware of what is happening. But then also just sharing some news that we are in conversations with some small initiatives close to these indigenous communities to take the film to them, because definitely it's something really important for us just to bring the film out and just to spark those conversations that need to happen, especially in the indigenous communities or the communities that are living close to these animals and that can protect them, and they have a direct link with them. So yeah, I think that would be for me.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for your time. To everyone watching, thank you so much for your interest in this incredible film, Jaguar Spirit, and for participating in this Q&A. I know a lot of people want to walk away with some kind of call to action, and I'll just remind everybody, if you are so inclined, send the link of the Spanish version of this film to anyone you know in the Spanish-speaking world and start spreading the word. It's something that we can all do literally in the next 10 minutes to help the jaguars. Emmy, Roberto, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for making this incredibly powerful film. Jaguar Spirit is a personal journey to uncover how Bolivia became the global center of the illegal jaguar trade. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.